Cache-a-maniacs.
GeoGearHeads.
I'm Daryl W4 for the Bad Cop, and you're listening to episode 183 of the GeoGearHeads. This week, we're going to be talking about Ingress. Unfortunately, Static J had to bow out due to a change in his shooting schedule, so it's just going to be the Bad Cop and I talking about Ingress tonight. But
Well,
first,
who is Static J shooting?
he's I don't know. He's working on Game of Thrones, so I don't think I want to know.
Oh, I see. Interesting. Now, I do understand there is some
Feedback.
Well, yes, there's some feedback coming up, but no, there's some animosity between the different factions, between the two factions in Ingress, and I thought maybe that led to some violence.
Oh, that could be. But you know what? We're opposing factions in Ingress as well.
That's right.
So is there going to be
I should have worn a blue shirt. I at least have blue on my shirt.
See, and I wore my
wearing a green shirt.
Yes.
Did you plan that?
I actually kind of did.
Oh, man, I should have thought ahead.
Oh, if I could have found my Ingress shirt, because I actually have the Ingress Helios shirt that we made up for the event here in Detroit, I probably would have worn that, but I couldn't figure out where that was, and it just dawned on me. I think I know right where it is now.
We'll wait.
Yep, I do.
Okay. Now, but we do have feedback as well tonight, Daryl. You know, I think of things on the air, and I don't necessarily investigate them well before I mention them. That's what makes these shows so exciting, and the reason why you want to watch and listen live. However, last week we talked about lab caches and how they appear in your stats. There you go, Daryl.
Yes, I have the shirt. Now that I remembered where it was, I could have put it on for tonight's show.
So DeBear wrote in, he sent us an email because, well, you know, he is kind of the research department for this podcast. And he says, lab caches appear in any stats that are based on type and your total find. They do not appear in location stats. For example, how many finds per state or county, difficulty terrain stats, or other metadata stats, because the lab caches do not contain that data. That's why some stats are different than others.
Yeah, that kind of is where I was going with my thoughts, but the location stuff, that really didn't make a whole lot of sense to me until I started thinking, well, they're probably looking at these as eventually becoming locationless type caches as well, so that it's something that anyone in the world could do, in which case you certainly wouldn't want the lab caches to count.
Right. Now you have to, well, the lab caches that I have found, you have to be close in order to get the clue of what they're looking for to give the answer.
Sure, but you can always log them later on the computer with the answers.
Right. You're exactly right.
So I think that's a limitation that's kind of artificial right now, because it could easily pull that and just make it, hey, find this information off this TV show, for instance, and log this lab cache. And I could see them doing that because they've had partnerships with like the Dinosaur Train before.
I was thinking Planet of the Apes movies.
Yeah, that works too. There's been a couple of other movies I thought that they had tie-ins. The Earth to Echo, they actually did the lab caches for that one.
Yes.
But those were still location-based.
Exactly.
But they might do something, think about if, let's say, ABC News, for instance, and we're not saying any particular ABC, it could be the American, it could be the Australian, who knows, did a report on geocaching. They could give a secret clue to a lab cache in that report, and that would be an interesting cross-promotional kind of situation. So I don't think at that point it would be news.
There are several authors that we've talked to on this podcast that could put clues in their books. and
Exactly.
you'd be able to solve a lab cache based on that. So there are a lot of interesting ideas. So we'll have to see where lab caches go. I like the fact that they're still somewhat special, only available at megas or
Well, and I do
gigas.
wonder if the version of lab caches that we know and understand right now is going to completely disappear at some point. Obviously, if it gets released into the wild as a regular cache type, you're not going to call it lab.
Right.
But when that happens, is it going to be a commercial product? Maybe because they kind of had some looks at that. But I think if it is a commercial type product, it's still going to be available just for mega events as well. So if you're doing a mega or a giga event, you get the commercial promotion of having the lab cache.
Right. And the fact that it works entirely from a web page. You don't need the geocaching app. You don't need a GPS. But you do need a GPS enabled smartphone, and it works entirely for there. So I could see downtown historical tours easily being accomplished by what we currently call lab caches.
Sure, and that's kind of the appeal of Intercache as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been a long time since we've talked with him. Maybe we should get in touch and do an update show on Intercache. But there's a lot of that interest happening, and that's kind of the whole point behind Cider, was that they were doing it with tourists agencies in different countries. So special versions or special trails. So I
Mm-hmm.
could definitely see the appeal of something that's web-based only, except that even with the versions that Cider was doing with the custom apps, you still had to have that data connection. So what's the big deal of going to a web page? But if you could do that completely offline, I think it's a lot more appealing to the tourists, because then they wouldn't have to worry about data roaming, and using up that precious data if they're actually out hunting the sites or the locations along the trail.
Right. To have that work as a true tourist attraction, you're going to need to be able to download those to avoid data roaming charges. I mean, just going across the border into Canada, it can bankrupt you.
Yes, as I understand from a 75-cent SMS message that came across.
Yes.
One message, 75 cents.
Yes. It can't be worth 75 cents.
No, it wasn't, because especially that one, because it was one of those just like, hey, I'm home kind of messages.
Yeah. Well, and you're happy to get it, but not 75 cents worth to get it.
Exactly. I can wait till I get, well, yeah. But I could have waited till I got home to get that one. Until I got, within range. I want some international roaming switches that aren't really available for regular, like phone and SMS services.
T-Mobile has some really good international plans.
I know. I keep thinking about that. But the problem is T-Mobile doesn't have coverage in a lot of the areas that I go just for, like occasional photography excursions, let alone for caching.
So you're going to need a second phone.
Yeah. I keep thinking about, really what I need is one of those dual SIM phones.
Mm-hmm.
But that would be kind of a little bit of a nightmare over here, from what I understand, because the carriers don't really want you using anything that they haven't approved. And that's not without good reason.
Right.
But, it's not the easiest thing to use in the U.S., because if it's not one of their phones, they kind of say, oh, well, you shouldn't have that on our network.
Not in my house. No, no, no.
Yeah. And I have heard of a certain very large carrier actually terminating accounts over unauthorized devices.
It sounds like a red carrier.
Yes, very, very red. And they really do tend to check things out a lot.
Yeah, that red carrier tends to really limit even the features on the phone that you have purchased from them, which that annoys me to no end.
Yeah, it's a device that you purchased. It should be yours. I can understand limiting the access to the network, but I want access to my device.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I don't want all their bloatware on my phone.
Right.
So with that, why don't we move on to our main topic for tonight, which is Ingress. And the question we asked was which company is listed as the publisher of Ingress. And it's a little bit squirrely because it's actually listed as two different things in some locations. But the name we were actually looking for was Niantic Labs. However, we did take Google as well because Niantic Labs is a department within Google, and they actually released Ingress back in November of 2012 with a limited beta. And I know I got in on that one pretty early on. I think it was within that first week. I didn't have a whole lot of success figuring out how it works and getting it, finding the portals was my big thing at the time. I know, Chris, you got in pretty early as well, but not nearly that early.
No, not that early. And I believe it was an invitation from you, Daryl.
I'm pretty sure. And you know what? If anyone does want an invite, you just don't need an invite anymore. But we do get credit for referring people. So if anyone from the show wants to give it a shot and set up an account, let us know. And either Chris or myself will send you one of our invites, and then we get credit for it. And
apparently, I have 60 invitations. So,
I don't know how many I have.
It pops up every time I start the app. I'm like, I don't care. Just let me play the game.
Yeah, it used to pop up for me, but it stopped popping up, which is very, very nice. I'm down to 57.
Oh, man. You're using your invitations. You probably invited yourself, didn't you?
No, I did not. I did actually invite a few listeners way back when, because we've talked about Ingress many times on the show, but it's always been a point in another larger topic, usually a randomized show, but we've had in future of gaming and some of the other talks that we've done as well. But before we move on too much further, since we've already announced the answer, let's announce the winner for this week's prize, and that was Those Guys. And they picked a couple of those state flag tags from queensandpins.com. So thanks again. Those guys. They're actually in your home state.
Oh, are they? Those guys.
Those guys.
Yeah.
not your current home state, but your previous home state, I guess.
Those guys.
Those guys.
That explains a lot, actually.
The home state of the Midwest GeoBash. Yeah, that is.
That's a good name.
And I'm excited to have them win because they've been contributing a bunch to the shows lately.
Well, good. Now, getting back to Niantic Labs being a part of Google, in the game itself, Niantic Labs, I don't get any Google references at all. If I didn't know they were part of Google, you wouldn't know it from within the game.
Very true. And we probably should also note that Field Trip is another one of those properties out of the same service or the same division.
Right.
And Field Trip is a great resource if the people haven't picked that up to kind of find out some of the histories and things behind an area, and can really help you not only find portal locations if you're trying to submit new portals, but get a little bit more information about those areas that you're visiting, or in geocaching, it might even give you ideas for some cool multi-caches.
Yeah. But Field Trip is very Google.
Yes.
You know it's Google going in. With Ingress, you don't get that whole Google vibe. That's all I'm going to say on that. So,
yeah, Ingress is definitely not googly because it is not fast and responsive.
Right.
It is not slurping up data. It is sucking it up.
Yeah.
So beware that you do need a fairly good device to play it on and a good data connection. I don't know stats right now, but when I was playing around the 1 year mark, if I was out for about 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, my monthly data usage on it was getting close to that 2 gig mark. So that gives you a good idea. I know that they've trimmed back the data usage since then, and in some cases, you're going to be using more data, in some cases, less data, depending on how much you're loading the maps and moving around. So, yeah, you really will have to get your own numbers to figure out how much you're actually using. But, figure it's going to take a couple of gigs of data if you really want to get serious about it.
Right. And we have to say that it's gotten much more conservative in its data usage as the app develops. Early on, you could suck through 2 gigs in a week.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It is much better than it used to be, without a doubt. But you will have to measure your own, because it does depend on your gameplay as to how much you're going to use. So it is kind of tough to give you that accurate estimate. Boy, that
All we
sounds funny.
can
An
say
accurate
is your
estimate.
mileage may vary.
Exactly. But that gives you, your fair warning that watch your data usage when you're starting out and figure this out, as to how much data you can use and will use, so that you're not going over your caps or paying, because I've heard people who got bills for playing Ingress that were quite astonishing. But if you're
Beauty
someone
of a free
who's,
game.
yeah, well, if you're someone who's driving around as part of your job, and you just have it sitting up there on the dashboard, and hacking occasionally when you're in a parking lot waiting for someone or something, you're going to use a lot more data than someone who's going out for half an hour, at night every so often.
Right. In the Q&A, we have Wet Coaster, who says it's really funny listening to Americans complain about phone plans. Come up north of the border if you want to complain.
Yes. I think we actually kind of talked a little bit about that with the comments on the roaming. But yeah, no, the data plans in Canada are just obscene.
Well, pretty much in the rest of the world as well. So,
Well, yes. Europe has gotten a lot better, as I understand. And then you get into Asia, and their plans make our plans here in the U.S. look silly.
So,
and he actually says that he started December 26th of 2012.
So that's like 6 weeks after launch.
And there's a whole bunch of jokes here. And we've referred to the two different factions. So maybe you should give us a rundown about what that's all about.
Well, certainly. You have the right one and the wrong one. Oh.
And the right one is green and the wrong one is blue.
No, not according to the glasses I wear.
Who wants to be blue all the time, though?
Smurfs. There are two factions. And, it's just simply two sides of a battle. There's not a right and a wrong, even though I like to think of them as right and wrong. There is the enlightened, or the green, or the frogs. They have several nicknames to them. But the enlightened have the idea that they want to help this extraterrestrial intelligence to evolve the human race and move us forward.
Now, we should also note that there is a huge story that goes along with Ingress, but we're not really getting into that today. We're talking more about the basics of the game and getting into it. And one of the things with getting into it is you do have to pick that faction. I believe, I haven't gone and checked it out, but it was immediately after doing the tutorial that you have to pick the faction that you're on. And a lot of people make the mistake that Limax was talking about. He said he went Smurf only to find out that his local caching friends went Frog. Smurf is blue, Frog is green, by the way, which is Resistance and Enlightened. I've got two good groups of friends on both sides. As a result, I've really lost interest in playing, besides the lack of a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that's been a lot of what I keep hearing from those of us who got into it so early. Was we hit those higher levels, in many cases people who hit level 8 at the time, that was all that you could hit, and then they just exited the game and really haven't played since.
Mm-hmm. I didn't get to explain about the blue because the green co-host cut me off.
Yes, that's what I do, especially when I'm preoccupied with the shiny object that is the live Q&A.
I know. I thought you did it just so people wouldn't hear about the resistance, or those who don't want this extraterrestrial intelligence to have any influence on human evolution. How's that? Did I say it well?
Good enough.
Yeah. So, as Daryl said, there's a huge backstory, and that's what makes Ingress different than any other location-based game I've ever played, is the backstory. There are books written on it. There is a comic book series talking about Ingress, and several online stories. And then Ingress itself, or Niantic Labs, goes into, what do we want to call it? Emphasis or series, or what's the word I'm looking for, Daryl?
Are you thinking of the live events?
Well, the live events, yeah, that's their focus, is the live events, but that story leading up to those live events, it's
Oh
kind
yeah,
of like
the
a mini
anomalies.
series. The anomalies, yeah.
Yeah, and
It,
there are actually other types of live events as well, but the anomalies are the big ones.
right. And the anomalies that yeah, fall over several weeks, and in host cities, and then other cities across the world as these things happen. And that adds a level of backstory that makes Ingress compelling.
Well, let's get back to the actual factions again, real quick, because this is very important. As Limex has said, you want to know that you're going to be not battling against your friends if you can. So that's the first thing that you should probably do is, if you have friends, find out what faction they're on and work with them. And it just like caching, and even more so than caching, it really does help to have someone kind of mentoring you and helping you to learn the ropes, because even through something like this, we are not going to be able to even touch on the basics of how to really get started. I mean,
No, we're not going to
this
be
is going to
able
be
to
an
touch
overview.
on strategy or gameplay with others. So yeah, we're just going to talk about the basics.
Yeah, but I will say, in most of the American cities that I've talked with, the blue guys, the resistance, do have bigger numbers than the enlightened do, and I kind of take that as a cultural thing, where we're in the U.S. kind of up for the battle, the whole revolution, especially July 4th is here now. Let's kind of play that thing up, the Independence Day, and it is kind of that mentality. But I've heard in other European cities, especially, it's exactly the opposite. So people do have the tendency to go resistance or enlightened, kind of based on which region you're in.
Interesting.
So my recommendation is, you always want to be on the downside. If you don't have any friends, friends are a different story, go with them. But if you don't have any friends, try to figure out which faction is weaker in your area, because it really is all about trying to turn over the portals early on. If you can't battle those portals, you're not going to be able to level up.
Right. And early on, when Daryl, you and I joined Ingress, there was absolutely no way to know. It was a blind guess. And
It was.
I looked at it and go, Resistance. That sounds like the Rebels in Star Wars. Yeah, that's who I want to be.
Exactly.
So, but that makes a lot of sense based on country and the philosophy of the people in there. So, now there are ways you can look and see what your area is. I happen to become resistance in a highly governed resistance cell. So as soon as I became resistance, I got contacted by people in that cell and saying, "Hey, we've got a South Sound group going. We want you to be part of it. Hey, we've got a Tacoma group going. We want you to be part of it." And we worked together and did operations, and it's learning from that is like, oh wow, look at this. All this.
That's actually a very good point. In the app is something called comms, which gives you your alert messages, things like your portals are under attack, you've gotten this stuff from doing this, that kind of thing. But it also does communications both with the entire community, and it is regional, so it's based on your location and distance from you where those messages are sent, what you'll see, and what and you can adjust some of that as well. But it also has a faction only, so only your fellow faction members can see messages sent within that version of it. So you'll find in many cases, in all cases, it's going to post a message when you complete your tutorial, that it posts a message into the faction chat, and you'll sometimes get mentions in there, "Hey, welcome to the game, blah, blah, blah. and many times they'll tell you, here's a community that you can join. And this is one of the only times in real life you'll find that Google Plus is the dominant community, and that's because it is a Google property and it's all tied into Google Plus.
Hey, I like Google Plus.
I do as well. And,
Okay.
we take a look at any of the stuff we do. Google Plus is where we get most of our interactions for the show.
That's true.
But, in the real world, there's not a whole lot of support for Google Plus.
That's true.
I guess that means we're not in the real world.
No. But I mean, if you're looking at Google Plus and you're saying, hey, let's favorite this on Google Plus, there's not a button on most websites to include that. So, or plus one it.
No.
So anyway, but that's a side note.
So, definitely take a look at those messages when you get in. It is going to take some time to figure out how all of that stuff works, and be very careful because you can accidentally send messages to the in the clear to everyone if you don't play very, very careful. And I actually ran into a number of bugs when I was doing it back in the beta days, where when I would send messages to just my faction members, it would send it to everyone as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my local team started using another app for communication simply because of that. It wasn't secure as you thought it was. So in order to put you on that app, they had to see you in person and look at your phone and determine, okay, you really are who you say you are. There were several people who spoofed their identity and tried to get into the group as spies. So,
wow.
All these things are at play.
Yeah, that's definitely a concern. Is you'll get into these huge operations, and this is one of the reasons why you do want to connect with these groups, even if you don't necessarily want to play with them on a regular basis. They'll go and do some operations where they'll go out and play for a day and do trying to accomplish this mission, and it is a blast. That's when Ingress really clicked for me. Was early on. I think it was cold February day. We ran out to Ann Arbor to help them out with some of their issues out there, because it was a heavily dominated blue city. So we went out there. Well, it should be.
Sorry.
It's U of M. It should be blue.
I said that out loud. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, and again, I think that's part of why it's so blue out there, is because it's U of M. But in any case, we went out there and did a greening of Ann Arbor, and it was a riot. And one of the most enjoyable aspects of it is, as we were walking around, we're watching the portals on the scanner change from green to white, which is what happens when you've killed it. It goes to, or no one's claimed it yet, it goes to white, back to blue, and then someone else would come up right behind them. So you're going around the blocks just watching these colors changing. It's just over and over again.
And it becomes a battle of attrition at that point. Who has the most weapons and resonators to be able to bring these portals back up once they've been knocked down?
Yeah, and even the way that works has changed dramatically with some of the new stuff. And that's one of the big things, and why we wanted to finally do this show, is because they have done so much to change the game. If we were playing the game, earlier, like even a year ago, it's pretty different now than it was back then, and it's worth getting in and trying it again. Mm-hmm. So, that's something we probably should have said right at the head of the show, because I know a lot of our listeners have checked out Ingress and given up on it. That said, I still don't play Ingress as much as I did back then.
Right.
But it is a very different game, and I'm still trying to figure out a lot of the changes myself, but it is more complicated, but not necessarily stuff that you want to learn to get started.
Exactly. You can get started. And, Daryl, I can't emphasize enough that the Ingress has changed so much from when it was originated. Early on in the game, and I know I've said this before on this podcast, it was a lot like geocaching. I would have to drive several miles to get another portals. And, my longest link at the time was 15 miles. Oh, yeah, now I can get a portal or get a link in 15 feet. I don't have to go anywhere. The game has changed in that aspect. And as gas prices were on the rise, having more portals close by, I think saved the game.
Well, absolutely. And as more people got involved, it saves the game. But for the purpose of this, I think what we want to do is just kind of focus on that capture the flag aspect with the portals, because that's what you're really going to want to do to get started, is just figure out how to play capture the flag with portals.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
So,
where the resonators come into play, because that's what actually captures the portals. And the XMP bursters are what actually blows up the enemy resonators to capture that portal.
right. So a portal is a physical location on the earth, usually something of interest, piece of art, history, what have you. That's changed a lot as the game has progressed, and they tend to be a little less. There is a process to go through to get a portal placed. You can't just place one and be done.
Yeah, it is a review process, and it's really bizarre and mind-boggling how that process works.
Yeah.
Not from the submission point, but the acceptance point.
Why is that accepted and that one not?
Yeah, it really seems to be random, and especially timing, because I've had portals that I submitted which received review in like minutes, but most of them take months.
Yeah, exactly. So you go to this location. A portal has a place for 8 resonators on it. You place a resonator onto an unclaimed portal, and suddenly it becomes, in my case, blue. The goal is to put all 8 resonators around that, and that one's yours. The enemy can come by and use bursters, which are a type of weapon, to destroy those resonators to be able to claim that as their portal. So that's the whole capture the flag. It can happen instantaneously. It can happen over weeks. It depends on how busy the area is.
Yeah, and one of the things to remember, especially as you're first starting to play the game, is you don't want to hold the portals. You want to turn them over, because that's how you get the experience. That's how you get your AP, is what they actually call it in the game. That's how you level up. And every level you get better stuff. You get better capabilities, just like in a lot of the role-playing games. So you start out as a level 1 agent, and you have no AP at all. Level 2 takes 2,500 AP, which doesn't take long to get, but when you're starting off, that seems kind of monumental. Level 3 is 20,000 AP. So that's definitely, it takes a lot of people weeks to get to that. And I've seen other people who do level 4 in less than a day.
I've heard people who got to level 8 in a day.
Yeah.
With help.
Yeah. I was going to say, with help, I can see them do that, or with prior experience. And we should also probably note, if you decide that you want to change sides for whatever reason, contact the support and have your profile basically reset, and you can change sides and pick a new name, all that kind of stuff. But you start over at level 1 again. All right, so level 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all are just based on the AP points. And level 8 is 1,200,000 AP. But that's the last point at which you're working off just the AP. And that's where it was when Chris and I got started, and most of the people in the live Q&A seem to be kind of in the same boat. Now they've added a level 9 through 16. And the way this works is it's now the AP plus you have to have the medals. So you have to have 1 gold and 4 silvers to get to level 9. For level 10, you have to have 2 gold and 5 silvers. I'm currently a level 10 with enough AP to hit level 11, which is 6 million AP. I'm actually well over that, but I only have 3 gold medals right now. But I have all this, and you need 4, but I have all 6 of the silver medals I need. So I'm stuck there waiting to upgrade. And what I've heard some people do is when they hit these kind of situations, they'll find out that they jump 2 levels at once because they finally get that 1 medal to throw them up. because at 12 you need 6 gold and 7 silver. It's that one of those kind of things is you can get, if you get like 2 golds in a day or 3 golds in a day, which I've heard of people doing, you'll skip 2 levels at once. Essentially, you'll go from level 11 to 12 or whatever.
12, yeah, or 11 to 13.
Yeah. It's more common that you're going from 12 to 13 because that's when you get into the platinum, and the platinums count as gold. And so if you had like 2 platinums, for instance, that were counted as gold, and all of a sudden you jump up, it's that kind of stuff that can happen. And at the high end, at level 16, you have 40 million AP, 2 black, 2 platinum, and 7 golds. So, and we'll point to, we'll link to the Decode Ingress manual in the show notes, so you can check that out. That's really a good resource for all of this detailed stuff. And there was an article that someone had posted, and we'll link to that as well, called Zen and the Art of Ingress, which is really a good read. I don't really want to go into it here because it is kind of involved and gets into more than we can cover here, especially because we're already at 30-something minutes in the show. But check out that article, Zen and the Art of Ingress. That will really give you a good idea of what the game's about and how you should be playing, especially when you're just trying to figure that out getting started or getting back into it for the first time in months or years.
Right. Another absolutely important link or tool you're going to need is the Ingress Intel map. And that's available to anybody who has an account. So if you just sign up, you're going, after you've done your tutorial, go to the Ingress Intel map, look at your area, and determine what faction you want to be.
And that will also tell you where your portals are, because that was one of the biggest problems that we had when we got started, is you couldn't see the portals on the scanner because they were too far away. So using the Ingress Intel map, you can zoom in and out. It's it's a standard Google map, although it's black with gray streets, but it's a standard Google map kind of interface,
but differently colored.
Yeah.
And it will show you all the portals, all the links, all the fields, and it'll actually show you agents moving around.
Well, and the other cool thing is the possibility now to check links, and it will show you which links are in the way of the link that you want to create. So that's a cool feature that was added since we got into the game. And so was the agent movement. That was pretty new as well. But before we do anything else, we've not talked about hacking and farming. And that's a very important aspect of the game that can't be ignored, especially when you're getting started. The farming terms tends to throw a lot of people away or off. And that's simply, you have to go out and get resources. And the way that you do that is by hacking a portal. So when you're doing farming runs, all that means is you're running around from portal to portal to portal. You're not attacking. You're not trying to capture anything. You're just going and hacking those portals. Now, the way that hacking works is you have 5 minutes between hacks, and we're assuming no mods because that's going to get a little bit involved. But you have the 5 minutes between hacks and 4 hacks per 2-hour segment. So what most people will do is come up with a good route around town or whatever. They walk it, they drive it, whatever that might be, to get 5 minutes or more between that first point in the hack or in the loop, and then you just go around and you hack all these portals, and you get 4 passes done, and you go away. And then 2 hours later, you can do the same thing again.
Exactly. So if you've got a good farm of portals nearby, that a walk is really good. A car is okay, you can still do it, but it's nice at walking speeds for me. I really enjoy that.
Well, it really does depend on where you're at as far as portal distances and stuff, whether walking works or driving works. There are a number of places where it's just not even viable to drive the car because the portals are in the middle of a park or something where you can't get close enough. Then there's other spots where it's so spread out, or near roadways without pedestrian access, and you have to go by car. Which should be also noted, though, there is a speed limit for hacking. If you go 60 kilometers or faster, you will not be
35
able,
miles an hour.
right, roughly 35, you will not be able to hack. Now, Wet Coaster said that attending a first Saturday event is a great way to meet other players, both factions, and get some great pointers on playing the game. And that is another excellent point that I've not actually had one to go to, at least when I've known they were around. But on the Ingress site, and we'll link to it in the show notes, there is a live events page, and that lists all of the official first Saturdays.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
there's another great question in the Q&A here, Daryl.
I was probably going to go to the same one.
Is Brenton Cumberpatch says, apart from the data, what other monetary costs are involved with the game? And, you can play Ingress for free. You need a smartphone and you need data. Most people are going to have that.
This is a lot like geocaching.
Right.
But instead of the premium membership, that's your fees, you basically have data as your fees.
Right.
However, there's all this extra junk that gets involved. And as someone was saying in the live Q&A, which I think I've already deleted because we didn't get around to it, it is very, here it is. It's West Coaster again. Mm-hmm. They do use Google Maps, and yes, they really suck the battery. Mm-hmm. So, oh shoot, there was another one I was looking for as well. But in any case, you will want to get an external battery of some type. Battery cases work, but this is one of the things that you've probably heard from other people and probably even noticed yourself if you're out and about. The Ingress players tend to have the battery in the pocket with a cord going to it. Geocachers tend to just have the battery cases or whatever. Because Ingress is so intense on its processor usage and the radio usage, your phone will get very hot, especially if it has to charge as well. So things like the battery cases are great, but you have to really, really watch it because you can get the phone to overheat and shut down.
Right. They can encapsulate the phone. The only time I've ever had my phone overheat and shut down is while I was playing Ingress. So,
I've never had a problem with it on my iPhone. The only time I've had a problem with my iPhone is when it's in the front window doing navigation.
Okay.
And the sun is beating down on it. I
have, in the winter, had to turn on the cold air to cool off the phone so I could continue to play Ingress while I'm driving in the car with it plugged in and doing full Ingress. So I'll let you know that, there are sacrifices that one makes.
Yeah.
I didn't turn on the air conditioning, just, the vent.
Right. Yeah, which in the winter is usually more than enough to do that. But yeah, that is a very important thing, is make sure to do your battery monitoring, we shall say. And this is one place too where it's really not a bad idea to take out something like those small tablets, even if you're tethering to the smartphone. Your phone isn't going to chew through nearly as much data as or not data, but power if the battery is, or if the screen is off and you're not doing all that screen drawing. And it is really nice on something like the Nexus 7 or the iPad mini. It's just an amazing experience. That's really the sweet spot for me, but it is really, really tough to take that out walking around town. And if you don't look crazy enough staring at your smartphone, and let's face it, a lot of people do that now anyway, but if you don't look crazy enough at your staring at your smartphone, you're really going to look bad staring at your Nexus tablet or something like that.
Daryl, I don't think that has the connotations you think it does anymore, because does anybody really look up and look at people anymore on the street?
They do around the police stations, and that's one of those portal locations is all those police stations. And this is a good, important note, and we've mentioned this before. Turn off your sound or use headsets when you're actually out there using it, because the in-game audio will be kind of alarming to people.
It can be, yes.
Yeah, things like target acquired. And I actually haven't had sound on in so long that I don't even know what the sounds are anymore.
I don't either anymore.
But yeah, it's very, very important to have that extra power. So if you're in the car, use a car charger.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't recommend driving and playing. Pull over, park, whatever. We have a lot of teams around here where you'll designate the driver, and you're just driving around with the passenger doing both phones for those farming runs.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with that can be you have to know very, very well what that run is and watch your speed. So that's one of the reasons why it really is a best practice too, to have that driver if you can. So, make sure you do that. Car chargers are very important. You want to have a good car charger, good cables, because the first time I actually saw someone whose phone had burned out its charge port was when they were playing Ingress.
And you may want to reconsider your phone case. If it's not a charging case, if it's a, well encapsulated one, like watertight, that tends to hold a lot of heat.
Yes. Yeah, and you can't have a lot of
you
problems.
need something that's gonna be able to get that heat away from your phone.
Yeah. Now, Limax said that he actually built his own charging case, or well, probably not case, but a external battery pack that used two AA's, and he hasn't, he did actually buy another one. Those are very, very handy. Those little AA type packs, but they are not going to have enough power in any of the versions I've seen to keep a game of Ingress going. To give you an idea, on my original Nexus 7, when I would take that out, it could not charge fast enough to keep up with a battery drain.
Even with a 2.1 amp charger, right?
Right. So I would run around driving that big screen. I would plug in, when I left, and it would be at 100%. By the time I was done, the battery would be down to like 85%.
And
even though
on a charger, on a
it was on the charger, and that external charger is just about dead.
Mm-hmm. But you mentioned the tablets, the Nexus tablets or the iPad Mini. Those really give you that extra power you need to keep going. And if you're not running a cellular radio with it, if you're running just off of Wi-Fi, maybe with the Nexus you can do that. Your battery's going to last a lot longer. So I started with the Nexus 7, and you couldn't keep it fully charged, but it was a nice device. I really enjoyed it.
Oh yeah, that's still probably the best experience, but I had to. I was doing most of my stuff on the Nexus 7 originally with the Wi-Fi tethered to a hotspot. And it really did work very well and had some serious advantages. One is I could go about 3 or 4 times longer than almost any of the other players without actually plugging in. So it's a nice device when you get that going, but it is really tough to walk around. And that's when Ingress, to me, works best, is when you're on foot. It's not much fun when you're driving, and it also drives the cost up a lot more. And not to mention, it's not a very eco-friendly game if you're doing that.
That's true. But I tend to play Ingress more in the car in the colder months.
Yeah. Well, and that's something else we really should mention as to why you might want to try this in addition to geocaching. This is something that's a great lunchtime activity because it has that ability to revisit the location several times a day if you wanted to. And it's encouraged. Unlike geocaching, which is go to this location once and you're not going to go back.
Unless there's a travel bug you're looking for, but that's a rare occasion.
Or that cache gets archived and there's a new one placed there. So, for that lunch hour activity, it's a really nice alternative. And down in Detroit Campus Martius, there's a bunch of Ingress players down there who every day for lunch, and I don't know that they're still doing this, but they had been a couple of years ago, would go out and have like open battles.
Okay.
It was, the whole thing was these different factions from different companies would be getting together and going and battling it out to see who got Campus Martius for the rest of the day.
That's funny.
And then they had, little battles in the morning and the evening too, but lunch was the big battleground.
Now, I'm fortunate enough that I have what's called a couch portal. I have a portal in range of my house. And I have, boy, it's grown. I think I have 4 or 5 portals now at work.
Wow.
So
I have one portal that's close to work, but not close enough that I can hack it. I can affect it with the bursters,
Mhm.
but barely.
Yeah, at work, I have to walk in odd corners of the building, and I'm just over here checking the Wi-Fi. I'm okay. What are you doing over standing in the corner? See where I can get to a portal.
All right. Well, I'm sure that we've missed a whole bunch with Ingress. If there's any key points that anyone thinks that we should have covered, let us know. That's 206 for our voicemail line, or email us at geogearheads@cashmaniacs.com. And of course, we love to hear those in your own voice. So, you even send us a audio file with an email, and we really like playing those on the show. But a couple of last items out of the live Q&A before we wrap up the show. Wet Coaster says you need to contact the local cells where you play. Google Plus is good for that. Where I play, they don't use the in-game comms as much, as it's considered compromised, as agents from the other side can create another account and listen in on the opposition, which is very true. This is stuff that we talked about. Yeah, and when I got started, really quickly we switched to Hangouts, but now we're using other things. And for the official anomalies, they actually use Zello as the voice communications, and they actually monitor that as well.
Nice. In the Q&A, Adam Demshire asked, did you cover missions? And Adam, we didn't, but that's, a time issue more than anything. The idea of missions is a series of portals that you hack in order to complete a mission. You have to hack these within a time frame. So maybe it's a downtown walk, perhaps, down a nice trail, what have you. Their portals usually grouped together by either location or by some commonality that you're going to go out and hack. And yeah, it's kind of fun. I've only done 1 or 2, and I enjoy them.
Well, he also said that he does not play seriously. He does it during his lunch breaks just to kill time. He used to geocache during lunch, but since he's cached out the work area, that's not an option anymore. He still does a little bit here and there, but he really doesn't get it.
Yeah, it can be hard to get. I would suggest you connect up with your local players, and I think like Daryl, that's going to click for you. You're going to say, "Oh, this is it. This is fun." So
yeah. Well, and even when you start getting involved with the locals and start working together on a mission, even if it's not, and I don't mean mission. Yeah, I don't mean mission in that sense. I mean, an operation that's not, a single time where we've had missions where, okay, we want to green this city and hold it, or we want to do farming ops. So if you get involved with that kind of stuff, it's a lot different. And one of the things that's also a lot different from geocaching is you'll find a lot of these things end up at the bar.
Yes.
Yep. And it's not uncommon that you'll go out for a battle, run into some other players, duking it out in Ingress, and go, okay, hey, let's go take a break and we'll all get a drink.
Well, in the Northwest, Daryl, it ends up at a coffee shop, but that's the same as the bar.
Yeah, that's a Northwest thing. I don't think they do that anywhere else, because everyone seems to talk about the beers now.
Yeah, exactly.
See, and I would go on a lot more ops if it was coffee, and not just because of the caffeine.
Oh, interesting.
White Coaster did have a comment, though, about the missions. Missions are good for finding unique portals and just learning where the portals are in your area. They are also good for when traveling, if possible. I did 3 missions in Victoria, British Columbia last weekend.
Nice. Interesting. I've only done missions locally. I haven't considered that.
I've never completed a mission. It's one of those bucket list things that, or I shouldn't say bucket list, but it's one of those things I really got to do, and just haven't had the chance to get out and do one yet.
It's your bucket list for Ingress before Ingress dies, right?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. All right. Well, we are running a lot longer than we should, and that's kind of to be expected with Ingress as the topic. But we really do have to thank the patrons, because the patrons are the folks that help us to bring the shows to you, whether you are a patron or not. We appreciate your support. A quick note, though, that Patreon did have some issues with a number of cards this time. Sometimes it was your card had been expired or reissued by the bank. Other times it was just a glitch. So if you haven't got the patron charges for the month taken care of, you might want to go in and check on that. They should have been in communication with you, but we really do appreciate your support, and they've been working on it diligently to get everything resolved. And I think at this point we only have 2 of the 6 that are unresolved. So thank you, everyone. And I did get a couple of notes, and thank you to for letting us know. No, you're not actually dropping support for the show. You just had a problem with your card.
Just a glitch.
And we had a great hangout on Tuesday. A lot of fun, especially after we stopped recording, and some of that was accidental on my part. But
isn't that the way it is, though? When we stop recording, that's when we can let our hair down, and we both have a lot of hair.
Oh yeah.
and talk about some things that we wouldn't normally cover.
Well, and it helps that I made a boo-boo, so we could laugh at me for that one.
There you go. You don't make many of them, so we have to laugh at you when we can.
Oh, I make plenty of boo-boos, trust me.
Oh, not that you talk about them. Anyway, but Daryl did finally let me get a tough question in. So we have a tough question for you for next week. Get it right, and you could win a copy of the How to Puzzle Cache book from our host next week, Cully, or our guest next week. We're still going to be the host of this show. Sorry, you've got to deal with us. Now, you might want to pause to grab a pen and paper, or open up your favorite note app, because this is a puzzle. Get that email titled Question 184. Get it ready and addressed to GeoGearHeads at CacheManiacs.com. Include your geocaching.com screen name in the body and the answer to this puzzle. Are you ready? The following words: door, sun, tree, hive, shoe. They all have a characteristic in common which allows them to be placed in a definitive order. What is that order? Those words again are door, sun, tree, hive, shoe. Now, to be honest with you, Daryl and I don't have a clue as to what the correct answer is, so we can't help you out. And we can only guess at the solution. And I've come up with some, but I haven't had a chance to test them yet that week. So we'll find out that answer next week and whom was drawn as the winner. But you must have that email sent to us with the title Question 184. Send it to GeoGearHeads at CacheManiacs.com by 6 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time on July 8th. That's 9 p.m. for those of you who live in the Eastern Time Zone, or 1 a.m. UTC on the 9th. Good luck, and we'll look forward to finding out what the correct order and answer is.
Yeah, door, sun, tree, hive, and shoe. I don't see any rhyme or reason to why those words would go in a particular order, but I do know what's coming up for the next 5 GeoGearhead shows.
Oh, Daryl?
Yes?
I need to say one thing that came up in the Q&A.
Okay.
It's S-U-N, not S-O-N. Sun is S-U-N. So I thought I emphasized the U, but apparently not. Well, it's sun, not sun.
More emphasis on how crazy a language English really can be.
Yeah. Nothing else would be spelled differently, right? DOORSUNTREEHIVESHOE. There we go. Go ahead.
Well, in that last one, people might thought we were just mispronouncing show.
Oh, it's a really big shoe.
Yes, we have a really big shoe. And we used to use for geocaching podcast a different service that had that name in it. It was a talk shoe.
Talk shoe.
And as we mentioned, next week's show is going to include Cully, Child of Adam, author of the How to Puzzle Cache book, and he'll be giving that away to the right answer. But we also have Jennifer of Team AJK back with us for Puzzles Q&A 2. So send in your questions for them to answer. Now, we're not looking for spoilers, of course. We're just looking for tips of how to address it, questions, especially about your caches that you'd be interested in hiding. Those always seem to be great. So send those questions into us at geogearheads@cachemaniacs.com, or, of course, you can hit us up on social media. Then the following week, this is one that I'm really excited about. For July 16th, we're talking with Land Monkey, KNL Caching, and Team K1W1. I think it's actually supposed to be pronounced Kiwi.
Team Kiwi.
Okay, there we go. But with ones instead of I's. And they're going to be talking with us about hack spaces. So, hey, we still haven't figured out when I'm going to retire from podcasting to play in the hack space, Chris.
Don't do it soon.
Don't want to do all the scheduling?
Well, you've got it scheduled out for several months. We can coast.
This is true. And next week after that, the July 23rd show, Randomize 35, is going to be really exciting if everyone can show up. And we've had a rash of people not showing up, so I am worried about a couple of folks just not being on for the show. But we got 3 great guests for that one. We've got Michael Miller of Cache and Release, Scott Burks of Geocaching Podcast, and Mark Downing of OBeep, all scheduled to join us on that show. So we could have a great show with 5 of us, kind of a Cachers of the Roundtable recap, I guess.
Oh, there you go.
Then on the 30th is going to be GeoGearHeads 187, and this is going to get a lot of people excited because we're talking about gadget caches yet again with WV Tim. Now, it does seem like it's kind of soon, but we went something like 9 weeks without a randomized show, so we're going to do yet another randomized show on the 6th of August. Our first show for August is going to be Randomized 36, and for that one, we've got DeBear and Land Monkey to do a Canadian takeover of the show.
Daryl, I thought we asked a hard question. However, I see Limax in the Q&A that says, I got it already. Can you let me do a harder one in a couple of weeks?
Yeah, I think we can come up with that.
Okay. But until then, check the Cachemaniacs website at cachemaniacs.com for more on the GeoGearHeads, including show notes for this and all of our episodes. We love hearing from our listeners, so leave us feedback by calling 206-350-3647, by emailing geogearheads@cachemaniacs.com, or through social media. Your support helps keep the Cachemaniac shows coming. Please consider becoming a patron through the link on our website to support the Cachemaniac shows. GeoGearHeads is produced by Chris Umfenauer and Daryl Wattenberg. The show's copyright 2015 by Daryl Wattenberg. All rights reserved.